Hi, Tracy. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Sorry, my dog walked in just as I started the interview, so my door
That's the
magically
best.
opened behind
Yes.
me. Um, Thank you so much for chatting with me, taking the time. I really appreciate it. I know
Absolutely.
I know you've heard this a lot, or rather, I'm sure you have. The film is stunning.
Oh, thank you.
Like
Thank you.
it's really remarkable. I mean, like, I remember Oka. Well, what I was told about Oka, but we'll get to that. I was wondering how your own experience, I know you talked about how it was influenced by your experience. This isn't a true story, but it is a true story. I was wondering if you could talk about how your own experience shaped the film for you.
Absolutely. Yes. The film is inspired by true events is how we phrase it, because the all of the events depicted of the Oka Crisis in the film did happen, but my family in the movie is a fictional family. Beans, my protagonist, played by the incredible Gowan Dio, the emotional through line, the coming of age journey that she goes on is very much my coming of age journey. But I have placed the character in these various historical events that I wasn't at all of them myself. And some of the things that she does and experiences are not identical to my own, but the emotional through line, the feelings and the growth and the shattering of innocence, all of that is pulled directly from my own coming of age summer.
Yeah, I mean, I, I I remember those years. I think I was in junior high at the time, and as an event, just strictly from the factual part that we knew is that there was a standoff. Here in Toronto, all we knew in our classes there was a standoff over a golf course. Um, but looking at it now, it feels so much about the concept of erasure, including in the media. I was wondering what your experience of that has been, and how does voice shape our understanding of history?
Oh gosh, it's so important, and it's one of the big reasons it was so important to me to make this film.
Mm.
The way the media covered that event 30 years ago did not at all jive with the experience I was having of it. The way they would talk about the Mohawk protesters, these were my neighbors, my cousins, my uncles, my aunties, and to call them terrorists, to send the army in against them, I didn't make any sense. So it was important to me to show the other side of it, show the inside out view of it, so that people could see what it was really like. And I'm thrilled to hear what you've gotten from the film, and a new perspective of it, because it has been for so long the policy of the powers that be, of the government, is to squash us, divide and conquer and take. And Oka was really that watershed moment where Indigenous people stood up and said no more. And I'm so proud that we did that. And I learned so much about our strength and our resiliency from that summer. I learned so much about the importance of voice and to have my voice heard. I learned a lot of negative things as well, a lot of devastating, destructive things that almost destroyed me. I was suicidal at 15 because of all of that rage, and all of that hatred was just living inside me. And that was that sense of innocence, that sense of safety, the ability to dream, all of that was stolen from me that summer. And I don't want that stolen from any more Indigenous children. So it's important that we tell the story like it is, and Canadians, they step up to right the wrongs of history and make sure that history doesn't repeat itself.
And that's especially true right now, of course. I mean, it's funny because a film like this, even though the events are completely unrelated, they're not completely unrelated of what we're discovering with residential schools and all these things. And honestly, I don't know if there could be a film more timely than something like this. You can't, it sounds terrible to say this, but you can't plan for this. It's not like, it's like, oh, but this is exactly the conversation we need to be having right now. I like the fact that you talked about the loss of innocence, because it's such a unique way to tell this story. Like, telling it through the eyes of Beans, there's an entirely new view of the events. This is not a soldier on the front lines fighting for the battle. This is a young girl fighting, not fighting to understand the world around her. And I was just wondering if you could talk about what that was like, and what that was, being in that situation and having to, well, I mean, Beans along the way, she's told she needs to toughen up, but at the same time, there's sort of a battle for her soul along the way.
Yeah, that's exactly what my adolescence felt like. It was a really carefree, fun childhood up until that summer. And that summer really, really shattered that, when I realized that who I am is not welcome in the wider world. There's no place for me. When those people threw those rocks at me, they told me I was worthless. They considered me and my family worthless. And so how, as a child, how do you process that? How do you understand that I am so worthless that they are allowed to throw rocks at me, and the cops stand by and let that happen? And this film it takes place during the backdrop of the Oka Crisis, but incidents like this are happening across the country to this day, right? Our children are being told by our society, by our country, that they are not welcome. And we are told every day that it is not safe for us in the wider world. That is really what I wanted to get across, because I think that sense of entitlement and sense of safety is something that the majority of Canadians, they take for granted. It is a given that, with the motivation and the will, like, you can pursue your dreams. You have a ton of examples of people just like you who are doing every single thing in the world. So if they can, why can't you? You can do it. I want people to understand that that's not the country that they present to us. And if your child was Beans and this is what she was going through, how would you feel about that? And we all have our own, I believe we all have the ability to make a difference. We all have our personal sphere of power. So we can all do something about this. I want people to see this devastating journey that Beans goes on, and leave the theater wanting to go out to do what they can to prevent it from happening to any other young Indigenous child.
You mentioned about the throwing of rocks, and I will say, I've seen a lot of movies this year so far. That was one of the ones that I legitimately could barely watch. It's just such a horrendous scene in so many ways. From a filmmaker standpoint, it's great, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
I do know what you're saying.
As a viewer, I just realized how that could have come across. But as a viewer, it's just like, this is so awful and so painful. I was wondering, for you, there's a really interesting tension in the film between anger and integrity, and there's this pull. Beans is pulled between the two directions. Her mother is saying, we need to show them that we're not who they say we are, and meanwhile you have her friends, and in some ways even her father, saying the opposite of that. what do you think it means to walk that line? Where does the line need to be drawn? Because there has to be a moment where we say no, but how does that work for you?
Yeah, that is such a interesting question. It's the first time I've gotten that question, and it's really the tightrope that I have walked my entire life, I would say, certainly as an Indigenous filmmaker. I firmly believe that, the cycle of violence, I do believe violence is like a disease, right? And hatred is a disease. And when we put it onto others, it then grows in others, and then and then it continues. And I say that because I know that was my experience. I learned to hate that day when those rocks were thrown at us, when the back window was burst open and my sister got cut with glass. That is the moment that I learned to hate. And unlike Beans, who lashes out quite a bit in the movie, in the film, I wanted to show what that hate looks like. But for me personally, that hate lived inside me, and it started tearing me up. We have to have a line that says violence is never the answer. We need to stand up for ourselves, and we do need to be strong. And as her mother says, you need to be able to stand up for what's important to you. And I believe, for me, that is the line, that there is a way to stand up and not feed the cycle. Yeah. And you see that in the scene in the film where the women de-escalate the violence. There are ways to do that, and we have to get much better at doing that. I think we're a society that turns to violence and turns to retribution and vengeance way too easily.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that. I'm glad that you brought up that scene, because it's a beautiful scene where the women come together. That's just incredible. Well, I mean, the question, looking at this event, what was 1990, I think yes. It was 1990. Have we learned anything? I mean, we're back here again, 31 years later, we're back here again. Has there been progress? Have we learned anything in your eyes?
Oh, that's such a tricky question. So the film is a historical movie. Yeah. It took place 30 years ago. But as you said, the themes are all incredibly current, and that makes me really sad, and it makes me really angry, because on many levels, I don't think we've come very far as a country in the way that the country handles Indigenous issues. I don't think the country and the leadership is very good at listening to Indigenous people. I think that's one of the big things that has to happen for change to happen. Is Canadians need to become much better listeners, and not be so quick to judgment or so quick to think that they know what the solution is. I think it's just about listening and then doing based on what you've heard. Now, on the other hand, the thing is, I don't want to be all just doom and gloom and dire. I do think there has been progress on some levels. And I see it right now. I see that there's an openness in this country to be hearing from us. There's a willingness to take down those walls. It's hard to take down those walls, because those walls protect you from feeling implicated, from feeling responsible. But this is your country, and these things are still happening across the country. The coming of age story for our Indigenous kids is still incredibly similar to the story that you see in Beans. So more work needs to be done. I do think that I am encouraged. I'm an optimist, and I always look for ways to be hopeful. And I am hopeful. And I want to believe in this country and believe in Canadians, because I need you all to do the work. It's not on us to make things better, for things that we didn't cause. It's up to Canadians to do that. So So my answer is twofold. We have not come far enough, but things are happening that are giving me hope.
I'm glad to hear that. I mean, not that things haven't come, but that things are happening. I mean, this is a time where so many conversations have finally seemed to broken through the dam, if you will. Like the floodgates are open, and I say that in the best of ways. There's so many things, and this is absolutely a key conversation that we need to be having in this country for sure. Tracey, the film is wonderful. Honestly, it truly, truly is. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for chatting with me. And
my pleasure.
Discussing it. I wish you the best.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Have a great day.
You too.